Fox 59's Bianca Reyes is live in the newsroom now with more on these new articles of impeachment.
Good morning, Zach. Yeah, Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives are calling on President Trump to resign immediately, but if he doesn't, they can move to impeach him as soon as Monday. They accuse President Trump of abuse of power, saying his statements at a pro-Trump rally encouraged Wednesday's attack on Capitol Hill. The White House says the president has no plans to resign, and now there are reports that President Trump is considering pardoning himself before the end of this term. Experts we spoke to say it would be the first time a president has ever done so.
The framers of the Constitution certainly seemed to strongly support the rule of law, which means that nobody is above the law. And they also tried to set up a system where people would not be judging their own cases. A self-pardon would violate both of these principles. And so it seems very unlikely that the Supreme Court would uphold a self-pardon.
Hi everyone, Adam is ready, all right? The United States Senate is in full meltdown mode, and not the kind of partisan squabbling that happens every day in Washington. We're talking about something genuinely historic. Senate Republicans, the people Trump counted on to protect him, are now openly discussing voting to convict him and remove him from office.
NBC's Pete Williams on tonight's top story. Pete, how would impeachment work with such a tight deadline?
Well, it could work very quickly in the House. You know, normally they have hearings to call witnesses and build public support for their case for impeachment, but they don't need to do that, and many of the proponents of doing it now think they already have public understanding. So it could come immediately to the floor for an up or down vote, takes a majority vote in the House to impeach, and then it would go on to the Senate, and the Senate could act if it wants to equally fast.
Can the House impeach President Trump, and can the Senate try him after he leaves office, or is that too late?
Well, the answer is nobody knows, and I'll tell you that the legal experts on this are divided into three camps. Some say you can only impeach a president or a federal official who is already in office. Their argument is impeachment is the removal of someone from office, so they have to be in office to be impeached.
Let that sink in for a moment. The president's own party in the Senate is breaking ranks. They're calling for accountability. They're saying the evidence is too damning to ignore. And this is happening right now while the House moves forward with impeachment articles over the Epstein files cover-up. A federal judge just issued a contempt order against Pam Bondi for the DOJ's obstruction of justice.
Out to the fallout, and it continues over the Justice Department's failure to meet the deadline to release all, that's what the law requires, all of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna and Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, they authored the law, announced late last night that they will bring inherent contempt charges against Attorney General Pam Bondi. In a statement, Khanna called the DOJ's failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, quote, an obstruction of justice, unquote. Jake, walk me through what this means that the two lawmakers are trying to set in motion and what it might mean for the Attorney General, if anything.
Well, what it might mean, Major, is a potential $5,000 a day fine after a 30-day grace period. Our audience will remember on the 19th of this month is when these Epstein files were due in full to be delivered to the American people in some kind of searchable format. That has not happened. We've seen a trickle come out even as early as overnight from Monday into Tuesday.
The judge found that the willful deletion of Epstein documents constitutes serious misconduct, warranting serious consequences. That judicial finding is now the foundation of impeachment proceedings. And Senate Republicans are paying attention. According to reports emerging from the Capitol, at least 4 Republican senators are considering voting to convict if the House impeaches. 4 Republicans. In a Senate where Republicans hold 53 seats, 4 votes doesn't sound like much. But in an impeachment trial, 4 Republican votes could be absolutely decisive. Because conviction requires 2/3 of the Senate, 67 senators if everyone is present. Democrats have 50. They need 17 Republicans to reach 67. 4 Republicans considering conviction means there are probably more. It means the foundation is cracking. It means Trump's support in the Senate is nowhere near as solid as it needs to be to survive. And here's the part that has Trump world absolutely terrified. Live streams from the Senate are capturing senators having conversations about impeachment. Videos are surfacing on YouTube of Republican senators saying things like, Trump needs to be held accountable, and the Epstein cover-up is unacceptable, and if the House impeaches, I might vote to convict. Millions of people are watching these videos. The public is seeing Republican senators break with Trump in real time. The narrative of total GOP loyalty is crumbling before everyone's eyes. Let's talk about what the judge actually found. The contempt order wasn't some minor procedural ruling. The judge determined that the DOJ under Bondi deliberately deleted Epstein-related documents, not accidentally lost them, not misplaced them, willfully removed them from public access to prevent accountability. The judge called this obstruction of justice, plain and simple. And that finding carries enormous weight in impeachment proceedings. It's not just political rhetoric. It's a legal determination from a federal judge that the administration committed crimes. Trump himself predicted this back in January. He said if Republicans lose the midterms, he'll get impeached. He called it an epic win needed. He knew the risk. He knew Democrats would move if they had the votes. But what he didn't predict was Republicans joining them. Now impeachment is moving forward. The House is preparing to vote. The Senate is preparing for trial. And Trump is facing real legal jeopardy from both parties simultaneously. The House floor debates have been absolutely brutal. Representatives from both parties are saying things like, Trump committed obstruction of justice, and the Epstein cover-up is indefensible, and Trump needs to be held accountable. These statements are on the record. They're being broadcast nationally. They're shaping public opinion about whether this president should remain in office. And the YouTube streams are capturing all of it. Senators discussing evidence, representatives declaring their votes, lawmakers from both parties making the case for conviction. Millions of Americans are watching these proceedings unfold in real time, and the more they watch, the more they understand the seriousness of what's happening. The presence of 4 Republican senators reportedly willing to vote to convict is a sign that Trump's support is eroding. It's a sign that senators are actually considering the evidence. It's a sign that some Republicans are willing to put the rule of law above party loyalty. And if there are 4, there are almost certainly more who are wavering, more who could be persuaded by the evidence presented at trial, more who are watching their approval numbers and calculating whether defending Trump is worth the political cost. Let's talk about the math, because the math is what matters in an impeachment trial. Democrats have 50 votes. They need 17 Republicans to reach 67. 17 is a lot. But the fact that there are reports of at least 4 suggests the number could grow. Every Republican who publicly considers conviction makes it easier for others to do the same. Cover matters in politics. When senators can point to colleagues who voted the same way, it diffuses the political risk. And all of this is happening against a backdrop of political disaster for Trump. His approval rating is at 36%. Independents are at 26%. The State of the Union was a disaster. The midterms are approaching and Republicans are likely to lose the House. If they lose the House and Trump is still in office, Democrats control both chambers and Trump faces even greater jeopardy. So why are Senate Republicans considering voting to convict? What's driving this unprecedented break? First, they're looking at the evidence. The judge's contempt order is powerful. It's not opinion. It's a judicial finding that the DOJ committed obstruction, that the administration deliberately deleted documents to prevent accountability. That's hard to ignore or explain away. Second, they're looking at the cover-up itself. The Epstein files were supposed to expose powerful abusers. Instead, Bondi's DOJ redacted the names of alleged perpetrators while leaving victims exposed. That inversion is morally indefensible. It's the exact opposite of what transparency and justice require. Third, they're looking at Trump's pattern. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a broader campaign of institutional attacks. The tariff overreach the Supreme Court blocked. The attacks on judicial independence that triggered a 29-judge rebuke. The contempt violations that have a judge threatening jail. The pattern is clear. This administration believes it's above the law. Fourth, they're calculating their own political survival. Trump's approval is at 36%. In competitive states, that's poison. Senators facing re-election in 2026 are watching those numbers and deciding whether tying themselves to Trump helps or hurts. For many, the answer is increasingly clear. Let's talk about what the impeachment articles actually say. They cite obstruction of justice. They cite abuse of power. They cite tyranny. These aren't vague charges. They're specific constitutional grounds for removal, and the evidence supporting them is strong. The judge's contempt order alone provides a legal foundation for obstruction charges. The documented pattern of overreach supports abuse of power. The attacks on judicial independence support the charge of tyranny. Now consider the dynamics of an impeachment trial. Senators aren't just jurors weighing evidence in isolation. They're politicians weighing political consequences. That's always been the flaw in the impeachment process. It's fundamentally political rather than purely legal. But here's what changes the calculation. When there's bipartisan pressure for conviction, when Republican senators are already breaking ranks, it changes the political math. Voting to convict becomes less about crossing party lines and more about joining a bipartisan consensus. It becomes easier to justify to constituents. It becomes easier to defend against primary challenges. The YouTube streams of Senate discussions reveal that senators are having serious conversations about this. They're not dismissing impeachment as partisan theater. They're engaging with the evidence. They're asking hard questions. They're expressing genuine concern about what the judge found and what it means for the rule of law. If the Senate votes to convict, Trump becomes the first president in American history removed from office through impeachment. His presidency ends immediately. Vice President Vance becomes president. It's unprecedented. It's historic. It's the kind of constitutional earthquake that reshapes American politics for generations. If the Senate votes to acquit, Trump stays in office. But he's still been impeached. He's still faced trial. He's still been formally charged with high crimes and misdemeanors. His presidency is permanently tainted. His legacy is damaged beyond repair. And he faces a Democratic Congress if Republicans lose the midterms, which would put him in even greater jeopardy. The timing matters enormously. If the Senate trial happens before the 2026 midterms, it dominates the news cycle heading into the election. It becomes the central issue voters are thinking about. If Trump is acquitted, Democrats probably lose because voters see it as exoneration. If Trump is convicted, Republicans get destroyed because voters see it as rejection of a criminal president. MAGA figures are already freaking out. They're threatening retaliation against any Republican who votes to convict. They're threatening primary challenges. They're threatening to withhold support. That's intimidation. It's an attempt to prevent senators from voting their conscience. And it's corrosive to democracy. But it also reveals how desperate they are. They know the evidence is strong. They know Trump is vulnerable. They know conviction is a real possibility. Let's break down what this all means. First, 4 Republican senators reportedly willing to vote to convict is significant. It shows Trump's support isn't monolithic. It shows senators are willing to cross party lines. It shows the foundation is cracking. And if there are 4, there are probably more wavering, more who could be persuaded. Second, Democrats need 17 Republican votes to convict. That's a high bar. But the fact that some Republicans are already considering it suggests the number could grow. Every senator who sees colleagues breaking ranks finds it easier to do the same. Third, bipartisan pressure changes everything. When serious senators from both parties say Trump committed high crimes, it's impossible to dismiss as a witch hunt. It becomes a legitimate constitutional matter requiring serious consideration. Fourth, the evidence is strong. The judge's contempt order is powerful. The documented cover-up is damning. The pattern of overreach is clear. Senators who care about the rule of law have real reasons to vote to convict. Fifth, if Republicans split their votes, even an acquittal damages Trump. The fact that some Republicans voted to convict shows the case against him was serious. Shows reasonable senators thought he should be removed. That legacy damage is permanent. Sixth, MAGA retaliation threats will make it harder for some Republicans to vote their conscience. That's the point. It's intimidation designed to protect Trump regardless of guilt. But it also reveals weakness. They wouldn't need to threaten if they had the votes. Seventh, the midterm timing matters. A pre-election trial dominates the news. It shapes voter perceptions. It determines whether Democrats or Republicans benefit from the outcome. 8th, removal would be unprecedented. First president ever removed through impeachment. Constitutional earthquake. Reshapes everything. 9th, even acquittal leaves Trump permanently tainted. Impeached president. Face trial. Charged with crimes. That stain doesn't wash off. 10th, this is a test of whether the constitutional system works, whether Congress can hold a president accountable, whether senators will put rule of law above party loyalty. The outcome determines the future of American democracy. 11th, the judge's role has been crucial. The contempt order provided legal foundation for impeachment, judicial findings validating congressional action, evidence senators can't ignore. 12th, what comes next is clear. House votes to impeach. Senate holds trial. Senators hear evidence. Senators debate. Senators vote. The nation watches. The outcome determines Trump's fate and the fate of Democratic accountability. Senate Republicans breaking ranks and calling for Trump's removal is a sign that this moment is serious. It's a sign that Trump's support is eroding. It's a sign that he might not survive impeachment. And that's absolutely significant for the future of the presidency and American democracy. The Capitol is on fire, the Senate is in play, and Trump's presidency hangs in the balance.